everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Growing from 0 to 10 plus contractors without cash or compliance stress. I'm John Davis, CEO of Signature Back Office, and I'm joined today by Diane Prince, founder of the Diane Prince Companies. Today's session is all about real-world success stories that you're going to hear directly from staffing firm owners who've successfully built and scaled their contract staffing business. Now, if you're not doing contract staffing today, or maybe you're doing a small amount of contract and you'd like to grow your contract staffing business, you're in the right spot. What I hear all the time from staffing owners are things like compliance in multi-state employment feels too risky, too challenging. The back office seems burdening. Where do I start? It seems very overwhelming. And probably more often than not, I hear, I don't have the cash flow to fund the payroll in advance. So today we're going to show you what happens when those barriers start to get removed. So let me tell you just a couple of minutes about Signature Back Office, and then we'll hear from Diane. Over the last 20 years, our team here at Signature has been providing back office services for over 500 staffing firms in the US, and we really focus on three areas. One is providing all the necessary compliance and insurances that are required to do contract staffing. Number two is to provide all the back office services from timekeeping to onboarding and offboarding. We provide a technology platform that enables that process to take place. And then lastly, we fund the payroll so the staffing firms don't have to. And not only do we fund the payroll, we advance the profit to the staffing firms as they go about growing their contract business. Diane, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Thanks, John. Hey, guys. So I help staffing and recruiting agencies grow. I do that by, one, teaching direct hire executive search recruiters how to add staffing, how to sell staffing, how to do all the stuff John just said, and grow. Two, with my agency, Kaya, which was formerly known as ATeam, and we staffing and recruiting agencies with remote employees from the Philippines to do things like recruiting, sourcing, but also operations, marketing, and anything that doesn't need to be done in person.
Outstanding. Diane, thanks so much. All right, well, as we get started, let's go through a few housekeeping items. If you could, keep your microphones muted, but we'd love for you to turn on your camera so we can see your shiny faces. Q&A, we're going to have the navigation bar open and we'll answer questions towards the end of our session today. And if we don't get to your question for whatever reason, we will definitely email you a recap of today's session as well as answering those questions as well. Before we get into the industry and business focused discussion, let's get to know our panelists. First off is Rob McGrew, founder of Broadreach. Secondly is Nealey Horan, founder of Horan Hiring Solutions. And thirdly is Dawson Henis, the founder of Henis Group. So we'll start with you, Dawson. How did you get into the staffing industry, and eventually what led you to go start your own firm?
Hey everybody, my name is Dawson Henis. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I started my staffing career roughly 5 years ago working for Randstad doing staffing in the manufacturing space. After about a year and a half of learning the basics of the industry, I decided to take things out on my own and I founded Henis Group. I operated as a permanent search only firm for about 3 years, and then in Q1 of this year, I actually launched Contract Staffing, partnered up with Signature Back Office, and then Diane Prince, who's on the call, was actually my coach that helped me learn the contract piece and helped me get introduced to Signature. So we are focused in the manufacturing space, and we fill everything from skilled trades to production associates to engineers and plant leadership.
That's great. So what do you enjoy most about the staffing business, and what's kept you passionate about the space over the last few years?
Certainly. I love connecting with local industries. So working with clients that are in the local area, it's really cool to be able to get involved in those companies and help them grow. What's been really exciting for me over the past 4 months is introducing that staffing piece, because previously I was just in the direct hire space and living in a bit of a feast to famine cycle. And at that point, my company was just myself and one recruiter. And I was constantly looking for opportunities for growth, but I just wasn't able to find that and kept hitting kind of roadblocks there. Once I introduced staffing, the opportunity for scale was really prevalent. And in the last 90 days, my team's grown from 2 to 5. Our revenue in the monthly cycle is increased by over 60% just in the last 4 months. So things are very exciting right now, and the business has just been a lot more fun, more scalable, and just very tangible. And the opportunity for growth is very prevalent right now.
Well, it's exciting. Congrats on the growth that you're achieving. Nealey, how about you? What got you into the staffing business, and what's kept you in the staffing business to start your own firm?
So I started in staffing with Aerotech, which is a large national firm. I kind of fell into it, I think, like everybody else. When I went out on my own, I originally started with the direct placement side of the business. Like everyone else, I think, staffing, yes, it's great to help people and know the industries, but we all like to make money, right? So that's why we're there. So with the direct placement side of the business, it was very much, we were doing really well. We're growing year over year, but then we start to look at an exit strategy, right? Like if we're ever going to sell, what it's going to make us money. And so it's the reoccurring revenue. So we needed to look at adding contract staff. We tried it a various different ways. I felt like self-funded. We were limited in what we could fund. We tried factoring. That didn't really pan out for us. It was very expensive. And so we really were looking for that solution to grow. And that's when we kind of fell into the signatures realm and went with them. And it's been a great solution for us. So I think, what keeps me in staffing is the money and the people and interacting with people daily.
That's great. Thanks so much, Nealey. Rob, tell us a little bit about how you got in the industry itself and what inspired you to start Broadreach.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, I started in the IT staffing business back in 1996, which was a really good time to be entering the IT staffing business because the whole .com thing was taking off. Little did we know that only a few years later that would be the .com crash, and that would come crashing down. But that cycle, as we all probably know in the industry, kind of does repeat itself. And there's booms and there's good times, and then there's not so good times. But anyway, I got into the business working for a company called Matrix that was based in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm based. It was focused on IT staffing, both contract and full-time staffing. That firm was eventually sold and then sold again. And with another Matrix veteran, a little more than 2 years ago, we started our own firm called Broadreach. Also focused in the IT staffing industry in Atlanta. So we knew kind of early on that we were going to hit this contract thing, and we should probably find some kind of a solution for that. And we were actually referred to Signature by another person that we knew in the industry that had been using Signature very successfully for many, many years. And he recommended Signature, and that's kind of what started the conversations with Signature. Yeah, I like the staffing business. I like the IT business. The IT industry is always changing, new skills. Now it's all AI oriented, but there's always something new and changing. I think that's one thing I like about it. So.
Thanks, Rob. I've often heard that staffing's the best job in the world and the worst job in the world, sometimes in the same day. You get to ride the roller coaster up and down. And you guys, the three panelists here, definitely have been through some of the ups and downs. So, Diane, do you want to kind of kick us off here with the questions?
I do. I think Rob and Nealey answered this. I'm going to ask Dawson this question. Dawson, what held you back from contracting before we worked together and before you met up with Signature?
Yeah, so previous to getting into contracting, the direct hire space felt like a really good lifestyle, and it felt easy to rinse and repeat, to grab a surge, make a placement, get that big hit. The idea of going into the contracting piece, I was looking at it like in either direct hire option or a staffing option. I didn't think I could be a direct hire firm and a staffing firm. I thought that it was going to be this huge undertaking to get in and to build the back office and to manage payroll and to really just be the back office of the staffing piece. So once I realized that there was an EOR option, which I didn't know existed, Signature was my first introduction to the EOR world. I simply didn't know it was out there, so I didn't think it was attainable for myself. the idea of funding payroll, I didn't really know what the options were out there. So it just felt like a bit out of reach. And the contract piece was just felt like a really big undertaking. So direct hire was comfortable. And I thought if I just stayed in that lane, maybe that was the opportunity for growth until I realized kind of the simplicity that went into working with Signature Back Office and the opportunity to grow there.
You guys, like Dawson was like, okay, it's first he's excited about it. And then he's like, the next week he's like, I'm not going to do it. And then the next week he's like showing me a spreadsheet. He has not stopped looking at his numbers. It's such an awesome, it's so awesome how that all worked out. Nealey, do you have anything to add to that? Like it's something that that held you back at all before working with Signature?
I think it was just the financing piece. Before I worked with Signature, I did do contracting a little bit. And like I said, we went a bunch of different routes, but it kind of would come to the place of, I was afraid to sign a big client or to whatever, because how am I going to do all the payroll for all these people? How am I going to pay all these people? And I think it was really eye-opening. I was kind of a crossroads of, do I hire a full-time payroll admin and invest in that person? But what if I lose this contract or whatever? And it was a nice reassurance with Signature that I didn't have to do that. I could just put everything in with them. They ran the payroll. It freed up so much of my time. It was really an ease of mind. If I got an order for 10 contractors, I didn't have to slow roll hiring them, so I could make sure that we could float that payroll. I could just hire them all and get started. So it was kind of a nice one-stop shop for me.
Yeah, thank you. And Rob, you mentioned something interesting in our pregame about what your hesitation about how it would look with clients. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had the same reservations as far as the resources and people and capital. But yeah, I was always like, how is the client going to view this relationship? We have the relationship with them, and now they want to bring on somebody on a contract basis through us. But they're going to do that through Signature. Signature is going to be the entity, paying the person and invoicing them. And how do I introduce that relationship, and what objections might they have about how that's all going to transpire? And what is the agreement going to look like as far as what we're going to put from a paper standpoint? What's that going to look like? I had come from a firm that did do it all in house, so I was kind of not used to dealing with those objections, I guess, or questions. So I was maybe more struggling with how I'm going to approach that. So.
And how did you approach it?
It's one of those things where I think I made a bigger issue of it in my own head than it really was. Like often is the case, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a problem, but it really has not been an issue. Signature's been great to work with as far as getting agreements in place. And honestly, most clients wouldn't, and Signature's actually helped us with kind of how to position this, hey, we've outsourced our back office to Signature. They're going to be the ones, paying the consultant weekly and invoicing you, and it really has not been an issue at all.
Awesome.
Hey, Diane, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
As you're working with search firm owners and they're looking to grow their business, and you get into the discussion about adding contract services, what kind of set aside the financial challenges and the back office challenges for a moment, what type of sales and recruiting obstacles do you typically hear about the kind of things that would hold them back from starting contract staffing?
It's mostly that they think it's too complicated, or they don't one thing I often hear is, I don't know how to sell it. So for that's one of the most common things. And everyone, I believe, is sitting on so much contract business. If anyone in this business who has clients has the potential of contracting clients. I mean, that's how Dawson started. Is I always say to everybody, first, you don't have to just take a small step and ask your clients, find out what their entire hiring picture is. Who else are they working with? Just ask that question before you decide, oh, I need to do another niche, or I need to do a higher level pay or whatever. Just start with getting the information and then asking them, where are you using contractors? And it's pretty quick to get set up with you guys, which is why I love referring people. People ask me if I'm an employee. I'm not, but I love referring people to you because you make it very easy. But that's probably one of the most common things, is just not knowing, not understanding, or how to talk to clients about like how to do pay rates and bill rates. But once you go through, like once you understand the numbers, it's fairly easy. Not easy, but simple.
Yeah. I'm curious for our panelists, as you've gotten into the contract world, do you see a future where you'll start to split one salesperson that focuses on direct hire and one that focuses on contract, and same with recruiting? Or do you see kind of going forward with people that do both, selling direct hire and contract as you grow the firm? Dawson, I'm curious from your perspective, it's pretty amazing the number of people you've added to your organization. How are you structured? Who does what?
So I brought in a dedicated business development representative about 2 months ago. So his sales efforts are completely focused on growing the contract and staffing piece of our business. I have a lot of existing relationships and business development efforts that continue to yield new direct hire opportunities. And within those opportunities, I'm now introducing staffing and contract into those conversations. So, like Diane mentioned, I'm going to the clients that I've worked with for the last 3 years and asking, not even in a salesy pitch kind of way, just, hey, tell me about your whole staffing piece. We've only ever talked about the permanent placements, the leadership, the engineers. Tell me, how are you keeping your production floor going? How are the operations getting staffed? And that opened my eyes so much, because 8 out of 10 of those conversations, hey, we're using 5, 10, 50 contractors. And to be able to have that information and then now present to them what we're capable of, those partnerships are so much more dynamic and well-rounded now, because we can support them holistically rather than just those placements. And then to focus back on my business development representative, he is selling staffing and contracting. I put him in a tight geographical area so that he can go out and about and sell in the local space. So he's leading with temp staffing and then discovering direct hire opportunities while he's out there. So it's not necessarily a strict one or the other. I can only touch this, he can only touch that, but I'm leading in the perm direction, he's leading in the temp direction. And then we try to crossbreed the opportunities where we can.
That makes sense. Nealey, tell us a little bit of how you're organized inside too.
Yeah, so I handle most of our sales piece, and then we have a recruitment manager that handles all the recruitment. We are currently in the market though, and I'm in Indianapolis today. I'm having a mid-year meeting, but we have decided that we are going to add a person that runs full desk and focuses solely on growing the contract piece. So they are going to sell contract sales, recruit contract sales. If a contract opportunity pops up with one of our current clients, they will recruit on that as well. That will fall under them. So we're going to kind of put that in its own sector so that they can focus on just growing that piece of the business.
Gotcha. And I may have missed this, but what type of positions do you typically fill?
So we are a skilled trades and engineering, all within the manufacturing realm. So we do a lot of CNC machine operators, maintenance technicians, and engineers.
Gotcha. And for those types of roles, do you find that it lends itself more to contract or more to direct hire? What's that mix look like from your clients?
I will say a lot of the engineering roles for us look like direct hires in this market. We are trying to push some clients to do a longer term contract, but a lot of those are direct hires. But a lot of our skilled trades positions, I would say 90% of them are all contract.
Interesting.
So maintenance technicians, we do get some permanent placements, but all of our CNC operators, our welders, fabricators, tool and die people, all of that are usually contract to hire. And that's just from the volatility in that market. So a lot of clients don't want to pay the fee right up front for the person. And I don't want to guarantee it for a super long time. So contract is a good in-between kind of try before you buy situation for them.
Makes sense. Okay, good. Good to know. Rob, how are you guys structured inside?
Yeah, we really have, I guess, two teams. One team that's the account management side of things, that's focused on the client relationship side, the job order side, and then we have a separate recruiting team that's focused on the candidate side. And then obviously those two entities, work very closely together. but the account management team will sell both, we'll do both direct hire as well as contract and contract to hire. So it's very, just they'll basically handle whatever the client is looking to do, whether it's direct hire, contract to hire. So.
Gotcha. Diane, I got another question for you. You've grown, scaled, and sold several staffing companies to some pretty amazing heights. And now that you're, helping firm founders get off the ground and grow their organization, what kind of guidance, what type of training do you give them on how to organize their organization to take advantage of both direct hire and contract?
Yeah, it's really, it depends on the person. It's very customized. One common thing that I hear is with smaller role, like sometimes people don't think it's worth it to do lower level or lower paying roles. And I know Dawson and I had talked about that. And I had our average pay rate was $17 an hour, and we had $1 million weeks. So
Wow.
we ended up selling the business for $28 million. And so those add up really. And we did no direct hire. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, I did not even do direct. Like Rob, I started in 1996, and I did not do direct hire until 2019. And I was like, this is insane. So, yeah, so it looks different for everybody because everybody has different approaches. I would say that one big difference is some people are very set. It's a lot of mindset, and some people are very set on what to me is a misconception on direct hire being more simple. And I mean, for contracting, in my experience, placements are faster. You're not waiting for a guarantee period. You're getting paid immediately. And in the long run, you're getting paid either about the same or about more sometimes. I mean, we all know temp to hire roles that have, probably, I know temp to hire roles that have lasted 3 years, so it really depends on the person. And, but we start simple and break it down and go step by step. And the more that somebody, it's really about their willingness to just try it and then see how it goes from there. But really step by step. I hold people's hands through the process.
Got it. That makes sense. That's really interesting. You started your firm. I don't think I've ever met someone that did contract only for, what'd you say, 3 years? That's impressive.
6 years. No, it was from 96 that I started, and I did not do direct hire until 2019. And that was I worked a desk for someone else who hired me to build up their contracting division, and they just like threw me in there like, do a desk too. I'm like, okay. But yeah, I mean, we had made like in those 6 years, like handful maybe. We did temp to hire, but yeah, it actually surprised me once I started kind of getting back into this world. It surprised me how many people just do direct hire and are resistant to staffing.
Yeah. Well, to kind of piggyback on that comment, I mean, we've got 2 people on this. Well, really, all 3 came from much larger organizations. I mean, Aerotech, huge. Randstad, huge. Matrix was a pretty good sized company as well. I'm curious, Nealey, as you go out and compete to win new customers or keep the customers you have, what's that competition like when you've got some of the big boys out there that you're competing with, and you're a smaller, player in that market? What do you do to differentiate? What do you do to compete in that type of environment?
I think one thing that's been huge for us is the fact that you all do have benefits available for the contractors if they needed them. I know that a lot of our clients, when they are looking at a long-term contract, especially when you look in the engineering space, if we were to sign somebody on a longer-term contract, benefits are really important to those professional type level positions because they could be on a contract for 3, 6, 9 months, a year sometimes, whatever it is. So the fact that I can say, hey, we partner, with a back office team, they handle all of our back office. I explain it to Rob's kind of fear earlier. My explanation is, hey, we partner with Signature Back Office. They handle all of our back office needs for our contractors. So you may see a bill come through on their email or whatever. I'll have an addendum at the end of the contract that just lets you know this again. But we do this so that we can provide or we can provide insurance to our contractors. And I explain it just like this. We do it so that they can have extra benefits, that kind of thing, and it's a better situation for them. I've not had any pushback. My clients are like, great, sounds awesome. I love that they can have benefits. The benefits are very comparable coming from like the Aerotech world that Aerotech provides for their contractors. Although they're a big company, they still don't have, top of the line benefits either, but it's the fact that they can have access to some sort of benefit if wanted. And I think that those are the big concerns that I see come up with my clients when they're looking at working with a smaller company versus a larger company. And then at that point, it's kind of like, okay, we'll give you a shot, and it's if you can deliver. And we usually deliver, and we deliver with better customer service than maybe they get from a bigger company because they know who to reach out to and who they're talking to and all of that.
Makes sense. Dawson, you kind of came from a multi-billion-dollar company as well. Any comments on that topic?
Certainly, everything that Nealey just said is spot on in terms of introducing signature and the benefits that come with that. In terms of our competitive advantage, I think getting on a call or being able to go visit in person and in front of our client or prospect, they're going to see the founder, they're going to see the account manager, and they're going to see the two recruiters that they're going to be working with versus the big shop. You maybe get that solo rider who comes in and they have a very rigid offering, and a big player like Randstad, they have so many different divisions, and it just feels like such a big shop and doesn't feel very personalized to the customer. We've been able to do a very regionally focused approach to our business development. So the fact that we're very local, niche down, and they get to see everybody that they're going to work with, that's huge, I think, on the selling piece. And then, like Nealey had said, a lot of times it's really just, all right, let's see what you can do, because we do come in on the contingent approach. And once we get in there, our customer service and our delivery really just exceeds what I personally experienced at Randstad and the colleagues that I had and what we were able to deliver. The smaller, more focused team, I think, really wins 9 times out of 10.
Wow, that makes sense. Thank you for that. Rob, I've seen some of your clients, and they're big, well-known organizations. How did you, this really relates to direct hire and contract, but how did you break through and get that chance when, Broadreach is not a multi-$100 million or billion-dollar organization? I mean, from a sales perspective, what did you do to compete to get your opportunity, whether it's direct hire or contract, to kind of get past the noise, break through the big boys in the staffing industry, and get a new MSA, get a new contract in place?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, most of our clients are mid-market clients. They're not the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 clients. There are some of those, but, we play a lot in like PE-backed companies. That's pretty prevalent. And I think in many of the clients, it's a PE firm that's either owns a majority stake or a minority stake, and they're looking to grow the firm over a 3 to 5 horizon and then sell their stake or exit somehow. And so they're trying to hire some key IT people to help with that growth, however that growth is going to transpire. That's very typical of our situation. But, it's our business is very relationship driven. Either it's maybe somebody that we've placed before, or we've worked with before, or we've known them in another company and now they're in this company. So, it's very relationship driven. But I would second what Dawson's saying. I mean, it's the larger staffing firm is very disjointed, isn't providing like that personalized approach, doesn't really know their business well. It's you can set yourself apart by the level of service that you're providing, and that's what we try to do.
Makes sense. Hey, Diane, I'd love to get your feedback and commentary on a trend that's going on it's been going on for a while in the contract staffing space, and that's MSPs and VMS. How do you coach your clients on how to approach those, or do you coach them to stay away? What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, we were first hit with VMS at like late 90s. And so it's obviously not going away. So what we did in my second staffing agency is we actually set up an entirely separate division that was just VMS which is basically like spaghetti on a wall staffing. Like you had, you're the fastest people to get the resume in the system were the resumes that got seen. So what I say is I love those mid-level companies, the ones that nobody's ever heard of that pay on time, that you have access to the hiring manager. But if you do, I don't necessarily say don't, do or don't, it's up to you. But if you do play in the VMS world, what I've done is I've separated it from my main business. It's, you have a different kind of recruiter. It's a different kind of service level. And it's also, if you get in, it can be great, especially like if you're looking to exit and you have, you're in one of these giant companies. I mean, that's huge because it is very hard to get in. There's a big barrier to entry. So, but it's a very long sales cycle too. So that's what I would say is really look at what you want to focus on. Don't necessarily decide we're not going to do VMS because you don't know. But if you do, you might want to separate it from the rest of your operations.
It makes sense. I've heard it both ways. Well, I'm curious from the panelists, anybody currently working through a vendor management system or an MSP program?
No, we're not.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I am not currently. I have in the past, and it is just a really long sales cycle. So I did at previous companies. I haven't put the effort into getting back into some of those companies. I can see the benefit, but it is very much spaghetti on the wall is a great term for it.
Yes.
We actually, John, we ended up spinning off that division and selling it to a PE firm that was backing an agency and trying to figure out how to do VMS. So we did end up getting rid of it, but we sold it.
Wow. I like that a lot. So Diane, I want to give you the floor for a minute. What questions do you want to ask our panelists? I've kind of been hogging our time.
I'd love to hear from you guys because one thing I hear a lot is how do I sell staffing? So I'll hear people say, I know how to sell direct hire. I don't know how to sell staffing. Nealey, what would you say about that?
I feel like if you already have the relationships and you know how to talk, it's more of just asking the questions around staffing. I ask, what does your contractor account look like? How many contractors do you keep on staff year round? Questions like that. Like the more information you have, the better. But then a lot of times, if they're dead set, especially when I'm talking in the skilled trade space, say they're like, we really want to hire this person direct because we don't think we can find the right person if they're already working, all of that. And I always say if they're already working, they will still take a bet on themselves because if it's contract to hire, they know they're good enough to get the role. They know they're good enough to keep it. And for you have the security space of knowing that, we're going to take on the workers' comp charges. That's the top time that somebody is hurt is the first 3 months that they are employed in skilled trade space is when they're most likely to get injured. We are going to take on, all the liability piece of it for them, essentially, for those first 3 to 6 months. And they kind of get to meet the person, make sure they're a cultural fit before they're all the way bought in. So I explain it that way to a client. To a contractor, it's kind of the opposite. It's a way to get your foot in the door and then show them what you can do and show them your value. So, kind of that's a twofold answer for you.
Nealey, I noticed that you asked them about their how many contractors do you have versus do you use contractors?
Yes, that's intentional. Because they might just be like no because they don't want to talk about it, but nobody's going to tell you no when you ask how many they have because they all have them.
Yes.
In some capacity.
Yes.
Great point. Wow.
Yes. Nice. Great answer. Thank you. Rob, what do you think about?
Yeah, I mean, the contract thing to me is it complements the direct hire piece. Like for example, you may be in like a direct hire. So you're working a direct hire role, and the client's interviewing, and their interview process is just very stringent. Nobody seems to ever get over the bar. They end up passing on every candidate because they've got 3 or 4 steps, and they've got 10 people involved in nobody can run the gauntlet. And, so maybe contract to hire makes sense in a situation like that where, hey, why don't you just, maybe you bring your hiring threshold down. You can just try and buy, if the things don't work out, then we let the consultant go and try again. But, they can complement one another, so you can be in a direct hire situation, if you will, and then find that this is really a contract to hire situation. Or maybe, let's bring on a contractor and it buys you some runway while you look for the right full-time hire, but at least you start to get some of the work done that you need done
Yes.
while you look for the right longer term person. So they can kind of, I think, complement one another. And it does give you like another dial to turn, another thing to sell, another thing to be consultative with your client about, versus it's just direct hire. It's like direct hire or bust. So it just gives you another thing to kind of consult with your client about what about this? What if we did this? And sometimes the candidate's not certain about the opportunity, so it's appealing to the candidate to go contract to hire or just do contracting. So, and in the IT space, there are a lot of needs that are very project driven. So it isn't a long-term thing. I just need somebody to write this application or build this website or whatever it might be. But once that work's done, I don't really need somebody on an ongoing basis. So so some roles in IT are just perfectly fit for a contract situation. So.
Yeah, love that answer. We used to do, even with contractors, if we didn't have somebody that had all of the skills, we would ask, well, we would find out what would help. Like because don't hire the wrong person, while you're looking to fill this role, what can we help? Who can we get you to take that some things off your plate, or whoever's doing this role, while we're looking for the ideal candidate? What about you, Dawson? How is it your transition to selling staffing?
Yeah, the transition's been rather simple. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but just by introducing this into the conversation, that's all it's really taken. So previously, our conversations were around the high level structure of the organization. Tell us about your engineers, your plant leadership. And like Rob said, it was kind of like direct hire or bust. That's where the conversations would dry out. And a lot of times we're working with organizations that have a total headcount of 10 to 200, and they maybe only have 10 to 15 positions in the organization that would warrant a direct hire. So it's either someone retired, someone left, they need that person, or that's it. And then the opportunity's dry. Now I can have conversations around headcount, production ramp ups, and I can ask them about scaling and what is the objective here. And we can talk about contracting. So before it really was just that direct hire buzz, but now that we can talk about contracting, we have a well-rounded conversation. And there's been a lot of opportunities that we were selling them and they didn't have that direct opportunity conversation. So it ended there. Now that we can pivot into contracting, it's allowed us to take conversations further and really identify new opportunities that otherwise likely would have not led to clients for us.
So it sounds like you're more of a consultant now in a lot of ways with your clients.
Yeah, we can be a lot more well-rounded rather than just honing in on your one opening. We can really look at your hiring plans like at the organizational level.
Nice. One more thing I would do, John, because you had asked me about coaching and how it works, and I saw there just a question pop up about markup. So one thing that people don't always understand is that with direct hire, typically you're negotiating the market or the placement fee. So it could be like 25%, 23%, whatever. And in staffing, ideally, you want to talk about the bill rate and the pay rate. You typically don't speak in terms of market because there's negotiation on either side. I know with Signature, there's a handy dandy calculator, which people really like. So I just wanted to throw that out. That's the kind of things that we do in coaching, is like those details. And people just call me and ask, hey, I'm about to have this conversation. What do I do?
Yeah, thinking in terms of bill rate to the customer, right? Don't disclose what the markup is.
Correct.
And not always, because the reality is, right, most of the rate goes to the consultant's pocket anyway.
Yes. And sometimes they ask. If they ask, then I disclose, but a lot of times they don't really understand what goes into it.
Yeah. Yeah, they think all of that goes to the recruiting firm owner. They forget about payroll taxes, insurances that are required, and all the other nuances that drive cost in a contract staffing placement. Good question though, to just ask the group here, what's your pricing kind of methodology when you are trying to determine what that bill rate is? how do you look at what the pay rate is and what type of markup? Does it vary by client? Does it vary by skill set? Nealey, I'm curious in your space particularly, how do you approach pricing?
So it really varies by skill set for us. Some clients, when we have really repeatable skill sets, we do have a set pay rate, bill rate, or set markup for the skilled trades, only because we know that they're all making around the same pay, right? And they all talk to each other. And so that's especially with like welders, that kind of thing. They really are within a strict guideline. We try to look at what we would make. So I pull out the calculator and I want to know, okay, so for a welder, I need to make at least $300 to $400 a week profit is what I like to do. And so I put it in the little calculator and be like, okay, this is where we need to be bill rate wise. Engineers, we try to make 500 a week is like what we would want to make, maybe a little bit more. But my recruiters and I sat down and like looked at our thresholds. We typically run, and I'll just be transparent, anywhere from 55% to a 70% markup on these positions. Now, they are very hard to find. They're very niche. So our clients tend to sign off and pay it because they'll pay what they need to find the right person. General labor, substantially lower. So it just kind of depends on skill set, how hard it is to find. I factor that in and then kind of just go from there.
Makes sense. Dawson, what about you? How do you approach pricing?
Yeah, so we also really heavily utilize the calculator, and the figures that we're looking for in terms of weekly gross profits, very similar to what Nealey mentioned. We are typically looking at 60% markups is typically what gets us there. I think our average monthly profit per contractor right now is around $1,600 a month. So we are looking, if it's a search that warrants maybe 2 or 3 likely placements, bare minimum, we're looking at about $1,000 of monthly gross profit. If we have an opportunity for high headcount, which we haven't necessarily gotten into yet, but if we know we're going to be able to rinse and repeat some general labor roles, we might be willing to take a dip on that GP. But we really assess it opportunity by opportunity.
Makes sense. And with the skills that you focus on, Rob, in the IT sector being kind of higher end, sometimes a niche, what's your approach?
Yeah, it varies, obviously. So you've got a lot of different pieces here. You're like, well, let's if it's a short-term contract, I'm obviously going to get a much larger margin because the costs are kind of the same for us to go out and recruit and find a person for a like say a 1-month project as it would be for a 12-month project, right? So if it's a very short term, the margin is going to need to be much higher. That being said, we also have a situation where the consultant could be working on a 1099 or corp to corp basis, or they could be working on a W-2 basis. And so obviously your costs are higher on a W-2 person than like a corp to corp or 1099 person. I know I'm not directly answering this question, so it kind of varies. I mean, I would say like a rule of thumb that we would have would be maybe a $20 net margin.
After all the burdens and taxes and everything?
Yeah, so if you add the pay rate plus all of the burden, whatever that might be, then adding $20 to that. Correct.
What would the average pay rate be in that example to be able to net $20?
So let's say it's a $60 pay rate, and your total costs, so payroll tax, FICA, SUTA, FUTA, all that stuff is another 20% on top of that. So a $60 pay rate, total cost is like $72 an hour. Mm-hmm. So you're adding 20 to that. So your bill rate would be $92 an hour. So a $60 W-2 pay rate, $92 bill rate. That in that example. Yeah.
Got it. That makes sense.
So that would mean every person you have out at $20 an hour. So if you multiply by 2,000, so that's basically $40K for every consistent person that you have working.
That's correct. Yeah.
Hey, Diane, I know you've told me a couple of times, when you look at opportunities for contract staffing, you look at, what's the markup opportunity? How much spread can you get there? What's the volume of requirements you can get from a particular client? But the one, that I hear you talk about often that I think is very often overlooked is what's the length of the assignment, the contract. And Rob kind of alluded to this. You do a lot of that work on the front end. And if you're having to change every 90 days, it's not nearly as valuable as a 12-month contract. What, Diane, as you're talking to folks, any guidance on keeping an eye out on the length of contract?
I've actually never looked at it that way. I think that was really an interesting perspective, Rob, that I never even, I honestly never even thought of that, because sometimes they go long, sometimes they go short, sometimes they go longer. Like I did when I was doing tech recently, we did a project that was supposed to last, and I actually placed, I almost placed somebody at a direct hire role. He chose this contracting role, and it was supposed to be a year. It ended up being a 3-year project.
Wow.
And I think they had like 5 people. So you just never know. And I mean, I started like when I was at that company, I placed my first person was like a customer service tech person, very low rate. And then we ended up placing their entire IT department on contract. So I don't know. I just get them and fill them. and I kind of stay in my own lane. It's like I know that legal and tech are so much higher, but like right now I do virtual assistants. It's very like, and everybody wants the low, talks about the lowest rate or whatever, but I kind of do what's in my best niche, I guess.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, while we're kind of around the topic, you've built, Diane, firms, scaled the firms and sold firms. What type of guidance are you giving, your mentees around what type of mix they should have and what that means on exit? Because a lot of folks get into the business because they want to own it and start it, and they don't really necessarily think about the end game. But what kind of guidance do you give them around their portfolio of business between direct hire and contract?
Yes, and even if you're thinking, which I do here, I don't have any thoughts about exiting. You still, in my opinion, I would still want to build a business that's an asset for yourself. So as far as mix, I mean, I really focus on the contracting part. I think the direct hire is just icing on the cake. That's like, I would pretend it's, that's fun money. You can invest it in real estate or whatever you do, or invest it back into your business. But contracting is really what's going to be looked at when you're going for an exit. And I apply the anchor client strategy, where if you can think about like old school shopping malls, right? There's the anchor clients, like the anchor stores. So you want to be careful of your client mix. Like I mentioned yesterday when we chatted, Countrywide was my biggest client in the financial crisis. The CEO was literally called the poster child of the financial crisis, but we had other business, so we still survived. So you want to figure out who your anchor client is. That's your ideal client. And an anchor client should be able to keep all the lights on if all the other business goes away. So you always want to have the 3 anchor clients, and then you can fill in the rest, and don't have one client be more than 25% of your business.
Wow, that's great advice. So not one anchor client, but get 3, and then try to make sure that not one of those clients is over a quarter of your business. Is that
correct?
Kind of the recipe? Okay. Wow. That's great to hear. Great advice. Well, I know we're coming somewhat towards the end. I had kind of a few final questions. Diane, is there any topics that you want to make sure we cover before we come to a close?
No, yeah, I'll put it to you, John.
Yeah. So we've got 3 people here in the session that had not done contract staffing before, and they found a pathway to get into the space. We've got people on the call today that have yet to make that move. They haven't jumped into that contract space for whatever reason, right? Whatever their reason may be, they're busy with direct hire. They are dealing with the unknown variables of getting into contract. For each of you, what advice would you give a search firm owner that is yet to take that plunge? Nealey, why don't we start with you?
I would say just try it. The biggest thing for me, the kind of hold up, was the whole like hesitation around, okay, how am I going to do payroll for these people? How am I going to do all that? And I feel like Signature took all of that away. with your all's tool, it's really easy to play around in there and look at markups and look at what your gross profit could be and play around with that. So I would kind of look in, play around with that, think, okay, this is what I need to be. And then I would start asking your current clients, how many contractors do you all have? Who's hiring those for you? Would you give me a chance? Like, be direct with them. If you have a good relationship, the worst thing they're going to say is no, but I don't really see somebody being like, no, I won't give you a chance. And I would just ask those questions. And once you get your first one, you'll see it's really not as complicated as you're making it out to be in your head. Especially with Signature doing the whole back office piece. You just put a little thing in, fill out the form of their information. Here's what they need for their paperwork. It's all there. That piece is all there. The recruitment of the individual is exactly the same. You're going to recruit them. You're going to talk to them. I would say 95% of companies I work with do contract to hire. Very rarely do they straight contracts. If they are, the candidate that you're talking to is used to doing straight contracts for project work. So I would not be hesitant on the recruit. Just let them know this is a contract to hire position, blah, 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 as you're talking to them. I think it's a great asset to add to your team, and I would just jump in and try it.
Jump in and go. Okay. Well, Dawson, you jumped in and went and pretty quickly scaled your business based on the cash flow. There's people on the call today that have yet to make that leap. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I definitely agree that you should start with having conversations with your existing accounts and introduce this idea to them, figure out how do they utilize it, not only for that opportunity that you might get to work with them, but just so you can understand the landscape in your space, because everybody here is in a different industry and contractors look different for everybody. So figure out the lay of the land and then run with it. For example, the first client that I worked with, it is one of my existing perm clients. We had a conversation on Monday. They gave me a couple of roles on Tuesday. By Friday, those offers were accepted. On the next Monday, I had 2 welders working for them,
Wow.
and revenue was generating right there. So that was just an idea of like, give it a shot. Diane mentioned like, I brought this idea up and then I was like, oh no, I'm not going to do it. And then I said, all right, let's just give it a shot. I have a coach, like the idea is here. Let's work with it. So I got to see how easy it was. Like the onboarding was just so simple. So just by getting a taste for it, I think you'll see how easy it is. My recruiting team, at first, when I told them, hey, we're going to do temp staffing, they were like, what does this look like? We're perm recruiters. This is new to us. We had a conversation and kind of confronted. I said, let's give it a shot. Everybody said we're on board. And a week later, everybody said, this is sick. We're getting paid out in commissions monthly, not just waiting on the big perm placement. So everybody's feeling really good about it. If it doesn't suit your taste after a month, like you can always go back to the business you have, but why not see what you can build if you take this option and go with it?
Wow. Good advice again. So Rob, I know in your niche, it's easy to get lured into these big fees that you can get in high level IT direct hire positions. What advice, if we've got somebody on the call today that's knocking down 20, 30, 50K fees, what would you tell them to take that first step?
I'd be like, keep doing that. Just add this to keep doing that. Just add this to the equation. I mean, the recurring revenue for us has really been a kind of a game changer. I mean, literally, we get a direct deposit from Signature weekly, and so it's like this recurring revenue that's coming in every week, and it really gives us like the confidence when we have to like let's take LinkedIn. You got to buy a LinkedIn job slot, and they want to sign you up for like a 1 or 2 year contract. It's expensive. But if you've got like this recurring revenue that's coming in, it just helps you with like, okay, we're going to have the money to pay. We've got the money to pay for that. I don't know. It just, to me, like the direct hire business, it is just like it's feast or famine. Yeah, when you make that big 50K placement, it's great. But when the person calls you a week later and says they've changed their mind and they're not going to start, then it's just terrible. And so I don't, keep doing that. Just add this to the equation. And I think you'll find the two complement one another. You get this nice recurring revenue that's coming in consistently. And then when you have the direct hire business on top of that, it's like the icing on the cake,
And then the 50K, and then you're holding your breath for the guaranteed. I would just like to add, it just like Nealey and Dawson said, just keep it simple ask your clients. You don't need to change your website right away. It doesn't need to be this big thing. You don't need to change your LinkedIn profile. Just have the conversations. Be like Dawson, have a conversation Monday, get someone working the following Monday. And also, people on LinkedIn get so mad at me because they tell me that I'm lying, that it's not so simple, and that the numbers are not. So if you guys ever see that post on LinkedIn, please chime in, because it's like people just don't seem to, they just make it so much bigger than it is.
That's true. Wow. So today's been very valuable. Thanks for sharing your experiences to everybody. Rob, Nealey, and Dawson, and Diane, as always, thank you for your wisdom as we go through this. If there's one takeaway from today, I'd say it's that growth in contract staffing is not really limited by demand. It's really limited by infrastructure, and having that in place so you have the confidence to go to market and sell. And if you're interested in learning how to partner with Signature, please reach out. We'd love to help you. If you want to get the best coaching on the planet, reach out to Diane. She's very interested in scheduling an intro conversation with you. And she's got some playbooks that are just dynamite to help you go from A to Z, and not only contract staffing, but how to build and scale your firm. So again, to everybody here today, thanks for participating. After this session, everybody here will receive an email where you can schedule a one-on-one with Diane if you'd like to learn more. And there will also be some information about Signature as well. We'll send out the recording after today's session. And again, greatly appreciate our participants. Thank you, attendees. We're glad you were here. And we will catch you at the next session. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.